My name is John Hirschberger. I'm going to read to you a few pages from A Bad Husband, a very funny novel that I wrote. The story is about Bob, a man who's looking for meaning in life. Bob has been kidnapped by a pair of women, Dorothy, who claims to be his daughter, and Lisa, who claims to be Dorothy's mother. At this point in the story, Bob and Dorothy, who have sort of bonded, are sitting in a Winnebago in a parking lot of a casino in Las Vegas, while Lisa and Bill, the owner of the RV, are out doing the town. Dorothy is at this point peeking into the motorhome next to theirs. Come take a look, Bob. No, Dorothy, it's not polite to peek. They wanted privacy, they should have pulled down the shades. Joe was by no means a good-looking guy. That, coupled with his membership in a 15% tax bracket club, was the reason he was, or rather was attempting to screw a toothless crack whore on a creaky bed in his ancient motorhome, which was parked in the packed RV lot behind Caesar's Palace. While the Mustang Ranch and other such legal brothels were way out of his financial ballpark, his monthly disability check did allow him the luxury of something a little classier than a trollop he was now flopping around on top of. But, as they say, penny wise, pound foolish, for as he was unsuccessfully attempting to copulate with a wanton woman, she was successfully emptying his wallet of cash and credit cards. The harlot was on her back, legs wide apart, not as wide apart as necessary to give birth, but close to it. Joe was having trouble at the point of insertion. Every time he came close to hitting the mark, his artificial leg would twist to the side, throwing him off balance just enough to cause a fatal change in trajectory. Joe was overdue to be refitted. You got to see this, Dorothy said. Dorothy, pull down the shade. Joe lost his leg in a Gulf War, Desert Storm, 1991. He was a reservist called up, a member of the 103rd Maintenance Division, the jaunty janitors. It happened during a routine mission. The C-5 Galaxy transport that had touched down the previous evening was in bad shape. Someone had left the door open and sand from the surrounding desert had blown into the cargo hull. Joe's platoon was called in to do a sweep of the interior, while mechanics ran routine diagnostics on the engines and hydraulic system. The mission was a success. Joe and his buddies had the interior of the huge cargo hauler spotless in no time at all. They were about to disembark for an early lunch when they were stopped by a mechanic and ordered to dispose of a 5-gallon container of hydraulic fluid. Just dump it off the side of the runway, the sergeant ordered. It's new, hasn't been opened yet, one of Joe's buddies informed the sergeant. Just dump the shit, I got things to do. He turned and walked out. After a short discussion, it was agreed that the black market value of the fluid was nil, so they would go ahead and rather than drag it out of the airplane and across the runway, find a place in C-5 where the can of fluid could be secreted. Fuck the sergeant. If he wants it dumped, he can do it himself. While they were searching for a place to stash the can, one of the guys mentioned that he had heard stories about Russian soldiers drinking the stuff in Afghanistan. They're fucking ragheads in Afghanistan. It's against their fucking religion to drink, so there ain't no booze there, just like there ain't none here. But they say this stuff will really get you wasted even better. Following a short debate, it was agreed that a little sip couldn't hurt. What followed was proof that Dr. Emil Stein's theory of fluidity was relevant when applied to morons. Joe, ignoring the armed forces' #1 rule, don't volunteer, volunteered to try a slug to see if hydraulic fluid was indeed intoxicating. He should have looked before he leapt, literally, out of the airplane. Even though his mouth, esophagus, stomach, upper and lower intestines, and urinary tract felt as if they were on fire, Joe should have looked. If he had looked, he would have seen that the inboard engine, which he jumped in front of as he leapt from the airplane, was in the process of being tested. Though not at anywhere near full power, the intake of a turbine was sufficient to suck him towards an imminent and very gruesome death. Joe would have become a human smoothie had one of the pair of mechanics inspecting the engine not been able to somewhat deflect his flight path with a well-timed shove. Joe landed astride the forward edge of the turbine, which meant that one of his legs was on the outside, but it also meant that the other leg was, for a very brief period of time, inside the engine. Joe happened to glance up, and what he saw he did not like. Performance interruptus. He's nailed Miss America snagging the plastic. Bob went to the window with the intention of pulling the shade down, but the sight of a one-legged man beating a naked woman with a prosthetic limb could not be ignored. pretty wild, huh, Bob? Viva Las Vegas. You can buy the book or download it at Amazon.com, or you can go to RubenandMeyer.com and buy the book there.